Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about the State of the Union and how this was a little different. Um, and we'll run through some unique things that I think are worth mentioning out of it. There's going to be tons of, here's the top 8 takeaways or whatever to get more information from. Before we get into that, quick recap because I'm sure at this point people are tired of the interruptions. But the fundraiser for Project Rebound has closed. $90,000. $90,000. Please keep in mind the hope was that we were going to be able to push enough that way to match what happened last year, which was 23,000. Just really, really good stuff. But y'all don't want to hear about that. Y'all want to hear about the State of the Union. Okay, if you have seen a bunch of State of the Union addresses in the past, I would watch this just for comparison's sake because it was different. Normally, a State of the Union speech is it has sound bites for the media, but for the most part, it is low energy and boring. Very policy driven, just very low speed. Biden was energetic. I would say almost too much at some points, coming off a bit yelly at times. Not to the level of like a Howard Dean scream, but he might should have dialed it back a little bit at moments, but it came across okay. Throughout the speech, he made jabs at Trump, but I don't think he ever used his name. And I didn't rewatch the whole thing, but I feel like that was intentional. Like when he was talking about Roe. He's like, my predecessor's bragging about it. He's bragging about it. He did this and da 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 da. Never used his name, I don't think. If he did, it wasn't many times. When he was talking about the economy, he used the phrase, the greatest story never told. Most people are reading that as kind of a swipe at the media for what the administration perceives as a bunch of negative coverage, which is, there's some truth in that, but I think that was also an acknowledgement that the Democratic Party has bad messaging. When a headline goes out that says, 6 in 10, blah, 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 and that's objectively better than what it was, they should be responding to that, and they're not. Our economy has a lot of income inequality in it. There's a lot of inequality built into the system, so a lot of stats are always going to have that. If it's better than it was before, it should be something that the Democratic Party could use to say, our policies are at least better than the Republicans. But that doesn't happen. I think his statement was talking about both. He talked about the lies that went out about the election, said it was the greatest threat to democracy, going back to what worked for him in 2020. And given the fact that a lot of those less than accurate statements are still being repeated, it might still carry a lot of weight. I would think it would, but we'll wait and see. When it comes to foreign policy, there was quite a bit about that. He talked about Ukraine a bit, and again took a swipe at his predecessor. When talking about what Trump said, saying, well, I would tell Putin to do whatever he wanted, talking about NATO countries, allied countries, if they hadn't met their 2% goal or whatever. And then he talked about Gaza, I am a little disheartened when it comes to that topic right now. So I would watch the State of the Union. I would watch the State of the Union. People have asked about what they can do when it comes to Gaza, and in particular asked if calling their representatives would help. Yeah. That's not always something that would move the needle. In this case, it will, especially if you live in a red district. If your representative is a Republican, and I'm specifically talking about in the House, in the Senate, they're a bit more deliberate, so not as important. But if your representative is a Republican in the House, it might matter, because that's where the objection is going to come from. The Democratic Party is going to support this and hopefully push further. But the Republican Party, they have a tendency to be very obstructionist right now in the House. So calling them might really help. And if it was me, I don't care if you're an ardent atheist, I would be like, it's the Christian thing to do. I do believe that would help. It would move the needle. Because some of what is going to occur, hopefully, is going to need to go through Congress. It's not something Biden can do on his own, particularly if they do get a real peace deal, because there's going to be funding involved with that, and it's going to have to get through the House. So, yeah, I would do that. Overall, I think most people would be satisfied with Biden's performance. Obviously, there's going to be issues with the various policy aspects and stuff like that, but I think overall people are going to respond receptively to it. But there's still a whole lot to do when it comes to a situation that is very pressing. And one of the things that came up was, it's going to take time to get this dock, the pier, what about, and then there were a whole bunch of suggestions. Yeah, all of it. In the meantime, all of it. There isn't time. There isn't time. It has to be now. I mean, everything, somebody suggested using Chinooks. Yeah, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. This is the moment where it's not rhetoric. You got to pull out all the stops. You have to pull out all of the stops to get the food and medicine in. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.